The lecture hall of the Galactic Military Academy buzzed with the usual pre-class chatter. Cadets from 17 different species occupied the tiered seats, their varied forms creating a tapestry of the galaxy's finest military prospects. At the podium stood Commander Vexthor, a Krathi whose 4 eyes scanned the room with practiced authority. "Settle down," Vexthor's translator chirped. The room fell silent. "Today we discuss tactical assessments of member species' combat capabilities." A young Drenic cadet, his scales still bright with youth, raised a clawed hand. "Commander, I have a question about the humans." Several cadets shifted uncomfortably. Humans, the species that had joined the Galactic Coalition only 40 cycles ago, yet somehow their reputation preceded them like a shockwave. "Proceed," Vexthor clicked. "Sir, what's the kill ratio for one Earth Marine?" The question hung in the air. Vexthor's primary eyes narrowed while his secondary pair widened, a Krathi expression that signaled deep thought. Around the hall, translators hummed as the question rippled through different linguistic matrices. "That," Vexthor said slowly, "is a complicated question." "How so, sir?" the Drenic pressed. "Every species has documented combat statistics. The Krathi averaged 17-1 in standard combat scenarios. The Vryn managed 12-1. Surely the humans have been evaluated." Vexthor's mandibles clicked, something between a laugh and a sigh. "Let me tell you about the Battle of Proxima Shade." He activated the holo display. A star system materialized above the podium, red and angry. 18 cycles ago, a Jurian raiding fleet attacked a human mining colony. The colony had minimal defenses, mostly automated systems. But they did have one unit of human marines stationed there. 43 marines, to be precise. The display zoomed in, showing a small outpost on a barren moon. The Jurians deployed 800 shock troops, battle-hardened warriors who had conquered 15 systems. They expected resistance to last perhaps an hour. A Vryn cadet leaned forward. And the battle lasted 6 days. Confused murmurs rippled through the hall. Vexthor continued. The Marines held a supply depot that couldn't be orbital bombed without destroying the Jurians' actual objective. Refined, stellar cores worth billions. So it became a ground war. The Jurians had numbers, heavy weapons, air support. The Marines had whatever they could carry and something the Jurians hadn't accounted for. "What was that?" someone asked. "The humans have a saying, adapt and overcome. I've studied hundreds of species' military doctrines. Most are elegant, efficient, logical. Human combat doctrine is none of these things. It's controlled chaos elevated to an art form." Vexthor pulled up combat footage. The cadets watched in silence as human marines moved through the outpost with fluid precision. One moment they held defensive positions, the next they were launching counterattacks from impossible angles. Day 1, the Jurians lost 90 troops to 43 defenders. They adapted their tactics. Day 2, they lost 85. Every day, the Marines would change their strategy. Booby traps, ambushes, psychological warfare. They once rigged their own ammunition to explode, luring Jurian forces into a trap. By day 4, the Jurians had lost over 400 soldiers. Their commander called for reinforcements. 300 fresh troops arrived. The Marines, now down to 38, somehow held. A Drenic cadet's translator squawked skeptically. "How is that possible?" "Because humans don't just fight with weapons, cadet. They fight with their minds." One Marine, Sergeant Chen, I believe, used a broken communications array to broadcast false coordinates that led 2 Jurian squads into a firefight with each other. Another rigged mining charges to collapse an entire section of the outpost, eliminating 70 enemies in one stroke while her team escaped through ventilation shafts. Vexthor paused, letting that sink in. On day 6, coalition reinforcements arrived. Of the 43 Marines, 19 survived. The Jurians had deployed 1,100 troops total. He looked across the silent hall. 43 humans eliminated or neutralized over 900 hostiles. The Drenic who asked the original question did the math. That's over 20-1. For the unit, yes. But here's where it gets interesting. Vexthor pulled up individual Marine records. Sergeant Chen alone was credited with 63 confirmed eliminations. Corporal Davis had 51. Their average was 21-1, but their best achieved ratios exceeding 40-1. The hall remained silent. "So, cadet, to answer your question, what's the kill ratio for one Earth Marine?" Vexthor's 4 eyes gleamed. "The answer is, it depends on how angry you make them, and how much time they have to prepare. A nervous laugh rippled through the room. But here's what you really need to understand, Vexthor continued, his voice dropping. Every species in this academy represents millions of years of evolution. You've evolved claws, armor, venom, superior strength. Humans evolved relatively weak. No natural weapons, mediocre senses, fragile bodies. So why are they so effective? The Drenic asked quietly. Because they evolved something more dangerous than any weapon. Spite. Vexthor's translator somehow captured the gravity in his tone. Humans will continue fighting long past the point where any rational species would surrender. They'll turn anything into a weapon. They'll endure impossible conditions. And, most terrifying of all, they actually become more effective under pressure. He closed the display. The kill ratio for one Earth Marine isn't a number, cadets. It's a warning. Never assume you've won against a human until you've confirmed they've stopped breathing. And even then, check if they've left any surprises behind. The lecture hall remained silent long after Vexthor dismissed the class. The cadets filed out quietly, each contemplating the terrifying realization that the galaxy's newest members might also be its most dangerous. And somewhere in the back row, the lone human cadet, exchange student, Lieutenant Sarah Morrison, smiled slightly and took notes on what the other species still didn't know about Earth's Marines. They hadn't even covered the really scary part yet.